Cool. All right. All right. Welcome, everyone. So today, what we're going to do is review kind of what we've been doing so far or what we have done up until now. And so the very first lesson we started off with was sort of Figma, kind of trying to understand if we want to create a basic website like this, how do we want to start approaching it? If I look at this website, I think, oh, there's so much to create. It's too overwhelming. How do I break this down into smaller components so I know how to create it? And so the first thing we did was just look at a website as if it's boxes. It doesn't matter if it's a mobile application, it doesn't matter if it's a website. Anything on the web, it's defined into boxes. And if I can see the visual breakdown of the boxes, then it makes it easy for me to focus on a section and concentrate on that section and then create my site. And I could have many, many, many boxes. I like to call them boxes because it's easier. So what did we do after this? We started to add some styling and understanding in Figma. How do we have different styles and variations or variants that we can then apply to get the best sort of visual symmetry that we're looking for? And then from there, we're able to see, oh, this is my hero section. Oh, this lines up pretty well with this box layout here. So we've got a picture over here, some text over here, and a button down here. So I've posted in the chat some of the previous videos that I've recorded and done for the previous weeks. And so if you look into the chat, you'll see the YouTube series already, and there should be 5 videos in there for the weeks or the 5 weeks we've been doing this. And then from here, we took this into HTML and we took this into CSS. And so we broke this down and we really focused on what I like to call stealing code. We essentially looked at what's given to us by our own browser. So if you have Chrome, if you have Mozilla, if you have Safari, if you have Edge, you can look at what are called View, Developer, and Developer Tools right here. And so in the developer tools, when I open this up, I get this panel over here on my side. It'll be on the right side. Maybe yours will open up on the bottom. Other people will open up on the left. Maybe sometimes it'll be up on the top. But the idea is I get to see all the components of my HTML layout right here. And so here we have our HTML, which lights up. The whole thing is blue because this is all HTML. Then I look at the head, nothing lights up because really this is just a syntactical section of like how to describe the page, which we're not going to get into. The main section we look at is the body section. And so in here we've got a nav bar. So if I hover over nav bar, then this area changes in color from bluish to greenish. So it's highlighting for me where the nav bar is. And then I can further go into the nav bar and highlight over the logo. And then I can further go in and highlight over the navbar menu. And you can see how this div is moving from side to side as I highlight over each one or hover over each one. And then I can see the links themselves individually. And then I can see the properties of each one. And so eventually I can get down to the base element that is there. And so what we're going to do today is move from HTML into React. Now, today's lesson won't really be anything mind-blowing because all we're going to do is look at a framework and really just get introduced to it. But the idea of React is to create a site that combines HTML, which is a very, very basic, simple, what you see, what you get language. It doesn't really have any logic to it. And to apply the logic of JavaScript to HTML. And that's what we do in React. Also, before I forget, the styling for all of this does not come from HTML. It comes from what's called CSS, Cascading Style Sheets. And so if you want to look at this page and follow along, I'm just going to pop this in the chat as well, so you have access to it. And that way you can look at View Developer Tools and follow along. And below down here, I'm going to I'm going to bring this a little bit more, increase this or bring it up. We'll see what's called cascading style sheets or element styles. And you'll be able to see CSS style sheet is the source of all of this information here. And then we'll be able to see user agent style sheet. This is what comes with the browser. So the browser already has style sheets in there already. So today, what you are going to need if you want to follow along is Node.js So you're going to want to download and install Node.js. This is absolutely free. This is what will allow you to follow along today. It'll allow you to build React code on your own computer, whether you have a Mac, Windows, or Linux, doesn't matter. Node.js works on all the platforms. Also, with that, you will also want to have Visual Studio Code, Visual Studio, and it'll be Visual Studio Code right here, this one. So we're going to click Visual Studio Code, and in here you can download for Mac OS or whichever browser or OS you have. Both of these products are 100% free. I am not an employee for either one of these products, but these are very, very common tools that are used to create web applications or mobile applications or anything really. I mean, with Visual Studio Code, you can edit in Python, you can do JavaScript, you can do Flutter, Dart, Java, you do all the languages in the world with Visual Studio Code. So this is called an interactive development environment, and you can download this because this is what we're going to be working with primarily. So today I'm going to get started and jump right in, and we're going to cover some very complicated topics. So if you haven't followed along thus far, it's okay. You can ask questions. So feel free to ask because today we're going to cover a lot of weird, funky syntax, which is very JavaScript specific. If you take a look just in this little thing right here, and we try to follow along what's happening in this little code snippet here, it's like, whoa, this is very confusing. I don't know what's happening. That's okay. By the end of today, hopefully, even just this will not be as intimidating. You'll at least have an understanding of what's going on in here so that when you're faced with React code or when you start doing React, you won't be as lost or confused. All right, so let's get started. I have created a folder called Week 6. I have a folder on my desktop called Learn to Code SPA, and in that I've created a folder called Week 6. So I'm going to share out my Visual Studio Code editor, and we're going to jump into that folder, which is currently empty right now. So hopefully you can see my screen and you see Week 6 here. Maybe it's a bit small. So hopefully that's a bit bigger, but you'll see Week 6, and that is a new folder that I created, and it is blank. There's nothing in this folder. By the way, if I am moving too fast, let me know, or if I'm speaking too fast, let me know. But I want to be as detailed as possible because I know when it comes to coding, this stuff is very confusing. So I try to provide as much theory and as much of the back end why as possible. I don't like just showing code outright saying, oh, type this and you'll get this, type this and you get that. I don't like doing that. I do like explaining why things are the way they are. In Visual Studio Code, you should be able to go to Terminal and New Terminal. And inside New Terminal, this really scary prompt pops up with this like cryptic thing that's like, wait a minute, I don't understand what's happening here. What this is called a console. This is sort of direct access to the back end of your computer. When you have all the visual desktops and you have the mouse and you have these icons, behind there is this sort of interface that I can use to manipulate things in the background. You can also break a lot of things from here, but we're going to stay away from breaking things today, and we're going to focus on building things. So in here is the command line. If you've never gotten familiar with the command line, I've posted some resources in the meetup to be able to get familiar with the command line, either Windows or Mac or Linux. So hopefully those will help. So today I'm going to go over some of the basics just to verify we have everything we need. So as I talked about Node.js, this thing right here, downloading Node.js, we want to make sure that it's installed correctly. So initially we're going to type in NODE and we're going to type in version, and I should get a version output here. So Node version 20.7.0. Don't worry about what specific version. It doesn't have to match this, but anything with the number 16 or more is good. If you're on version, I don't even know what the latest version is. I'm probably running on an outdated older version. It's okay. It'll work for today. I think the latest version is 22, 24. I don't even remember. But 20 is the version I have on my computer today. Now, coupled with that, what we can do is also check out what our node options are. So if I type in node -h, I'll get all these different options because this is a program. This is kind of like opening up the file, the edit, the view, the go, like on the browser, we can open up all these things. These are just the different options that are available. We're not going to go into any of these options, but I want to show you this is a full-fledged program that you can make changes if so in the future you feel comfortable to do so. But for today, we're not going to go beyond just running Node version. This is the only thing we're going to run today. Node comes with a whole suite of options, and those suite of options are going to help us create our React application. So in here, I am going to type a command, and it will be a npx node package creator. And so npx stands for node package creator, create React app. And I'm going to call this app first app. And since I'm in the week 6 folder, I'm just going to let this thing fly. Now, I don't recommend you type this out right now. I recommend you just follow along and just wait. If you've already hit enter, don't worry about it. It's okay. If you're typing along, don't worry about it. It's okay. Nothing is going to break, but just follow along initially. And then I'm going to walk you through kind of what we're doing. So we'll start to see, hey, this first app thing popped up here. And inside here, there's this file called package.json. I don't understand what any of this means, but it's creating something, and I see these bars going, so it must be doing something. Installing packages, this might take a couple minutes. And yes, it will take a few minutes. It should take roughly around 2, maybe 3 minutes for this installation to complete. And so what is it installing? It is installing React, our primary library where we have all the features we can extract, all the features we can use. And it is a very robust library with a lot of different tools that we can use for different things. It's got the React DOM, which is a, what does DOM stand for again? Document Object Modifier, I think. I can't remember exactly what it stands for, but basically this allows us to interact with the web page. And so that's going to be really important. React Scripts is another library that we're going to need, and there's a whole bunch of others. And so we can see that it's installed installed 63 packages. That's a lot of packages. And where did it install these packages? Well, in this thing called Node Modules. So before we get to Node Modules, I am going to walk through kind of what we did here, so it's not just a blur and a mystery. So here we talked about what we're installing, and we talked about a few of those packages. Added 1,479 packages in 52 seconds. This is a lot of stuff that just got added to a project. And if you look at the size of it, it'll probably be roughly a few hundred gigs. And I'm just going to do a get info so I can give you an exact number. 372 megabytes. Sorry, I misspoke, not gigs, megabytes. 372 megabytes. That's a good amount. If you've ever watched movies back in the day, they used to be like 300, 400 megabytes. Like maybe I'm dating myself here, but back in the 2000s, that's how big they used to be. When you download them to your computer, now they're a few gigs. Well, this is like an old movie, how big it used to be. So 1,479 packages in 52 seconds. Okay. They even asked for some money because this is all free. The unbelievable part is it's a very, very powerful tool that is all free. So you can donate to these packages if you want to. We're going to talk about Git. I've spoken about this in the past, and I've showed kind of like the basics of what a Git repository is, but I'll cover it today briefly, where it is a place where right now today, we've created this locally on our computer. So if our computer crashes, if it gets wet in the rain, if it falls from the balcony, if it gets destroyed, the hard drive is gone, can't recover, my project is gone with it as well. So how do I make sure that my project lives somewhere else where when I get a new computer, or I'm on a friend's computer, or I'm on a computer somewhere brand new in the library or somewhere else, I can still have access to my project and download it locally? That is what Git is for. It is a cloud-based repository owned by Microsoft, but available to the world for free. So we're going to look at Git as well. And then again, dependencies got installed using npm, and we're going to talk about npm not today, but at a later date. This is a package manager. So say I've got these packages that have been installed, and these aren't enough. Like there's some things that I want to do that don't come included in the base, like routing. Ooh, I want to do some routing. So how do I do that? I can install a routing package with npm. We're going to talk about that in the future. If you don't understand that, it's okay. So then we've still got sort of packages that got installed, and we found out, oh, our base package has 8 vulnerabilities, 2 moderate and 6 high. We can fix this today. I'm not going to worry about that. When you go work for a company, they will probably already have a React template that you would use, and they will have cleaned this stuff out already. But today, the base level, we're just going to use what they give us out of the box. This is like going to the brand new coding store, and the coding store gives us this product for free. It's got some problems with it, but it's not going to affect what we're going to do. And then here we get this nice little success, created the first app in the location that we have. Inside that directory, you can run several commands. What's really important is inside that directory, you can run several commands. So inside that directory, we can run npm start, starts the development server. npm run build, bundles the app into static files for production. Whoa, what does this mean? I'm going to come to this because this is really cool how React kind of grew and became really, really popular because it made it so easy for people to take this and put it into a production environment. And what I mean by production is Amazon Web Services, HostGator, any type of service that allows you to host files for a monthly fee, like $2 a month or $5 a month or whatever that is. But you can host the files there and you can have a static website. And so now you can have your own retail front with your own web page and everything like that. React makes it very easy to do that part of it. And we'll check this out briefly today. npm test, there's a testing component, which we're not going to get into this course, but it is a pretty important thing when you start to go work for a company, that you do want to run test cases, but this is a bit more of a complex topic. So we're going to work on that a bit in other courses in the future. So run eject, I personally haven't ever run this. So it's not something I would recommend running. I would say leave it alone. I don't even understand the whole use of it myself. So that tells you how important it is. Maybe some people will yell at me while they're watching this video and say, npm run eject is the most important thing in the world. How could you forget about this? I'm like, prove me wrong. I don't know. So you don't have to understand everything. But for the most part, we got through these, which pretty good understanding, and we got through all of this pretty good understanding. Also, now we're going to suggest following their suggestions. And we suggest that you begin by typing cd first app and npm start. So I'm going to do this. You don't have to follow along, but I'm going to do it so you know that I'm going to wade into these deep waters and there's nothing to worry about. Again, if you have questions, feel free to type in the chat. If I'm going too fast, feel free to let me know. But I'm going to type in cd first app. Cool. So now I'm in that first app directory. And then I'm going to type in what they're suggesting, npm start. And oh, things are happening. Uh-oh, starting the development server and things just happened. My browser just went crazy and boom, there's something happening and I have this thing that shows up. Okay, what just happened here? Well, what happened was I was able to install a React app and I was able to start a React app. And in so doing, I'm able to actually see I've got a live functioning web application right here ready to be modified. It's showing up in the browser. It's got text, it's got links, it's got all of this stuff. This is a web application. It looks really simple, but it's the bare bones that I need to get started on what I want to create. So if I got this far, it's pretty good. It tells me that I'm on the right track. So inside here, we have compiled successfully. I'm going to show you what errors look like and what problems might look like. And now you can view First App in the browser. Local, go to HTTP localhost port 3000, or on your local network. Let's say you have a home network. You can go to this IP address and this port, and other people can get to it. So you're sitting at home and you want your brother to check it out, or you want your mom or dad or your friend to check it out, and they're in your same home. They can navigate to this website and see the work that you're creating. All right. So this is also something that is good to know, that the development build is not optimized to create a production build. So we're going to look at npm run build later on today. So what I'm going to do is also success Webpack compiled successfully. So it means everything's working. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do something that I like to do as a part of development is to delete all the work we've done and redo it. This ensures that we know we're on the right track. So I'm going to CD to the previous directory. So change directory, go one level up, CD space dot dot, gets me one level up. And in here, I'm going to do a ls, and I see I have my first app directory. What I'm going to do is delete everything in here. So rm minus rf dot slash first app. So this is really important. The rm remove everything in the folder. So folder included, and the folder I want to delete is first app. So I'm going to delete everything we've done so far. And we'll see all of this start to slowly go away. And eventually, boom, it's all gone. So first app is gone. All right. Why did I do that? Because I want to show you that this isn't fake. I come here and the site can't be reached. And now we know our site is gone entirely. So the code is gone. The text is gone. The web app is gone. All of it's gone. We're starting fresh again. So what am I going to do now? I'm going to run npx create react app first app. So I'm going to do the exact same thing we did. And why do I want to do that? I really want to build in this habit of getting used to deleting things, getting used to making mistakes, getting used to wiping the slate clean and starting fresh. Because I have this sort of anxiety that happens. If I make a mistake, I'm like, oh no, I can't go forward, but I can't go backward either. Well, yeah, sure I can. I can blow the whole thing up and then start again. And so that's the beauty. I want to get into that feeling of, okay, it's okay to delete and restart. If I try to hold on to it, it's probably going to be more problematic for me. So if I get rid of it and restart it, I can breathe easier. I'm like, okay, what did I do? How do I recreate it? Do I know what I'm doing? And so this instills probably, hopefully, a level of confidence. Now what I'm going to do is talk about what's happening inside of here as this thing is installing. There's this thing called a package.json file. And in this package.json file is what dictates how to use all the files in our project. So right now, as it's downloading all of these things, there's not really a whole lot that's going to change in the package JSON until this is done, but you'll see this populate. So the name is first app, the version is the first version, and it's a private project. So far, nothing really exciting. Oh, now we've got this node modules thing. All right. Whoa. These are all the packages that we have installed. This is the 370 some odd megabytes of data that we have. This is all coming in, and we see the package JSON just populate, and this is massive. There's so many in here. You can see it's alphabetical, but there's so many different packages that we can tap into and use just to be able to support a React app. So there's a whole lot. We are not going to go into node modules, but I do want to show that node modules are the libraries that are available to us when we want to start using React. We don't have to know anything inside of node modules. We just have to know that node modules exists. So node modules exists. We have these libraries that are going to come from node modules. So if I look for at testing library, actually, let me just go to React, the big one. So if we go to try to find React in node modules, so node modules, let's scroll down into the R's because this is alphabetical, and we're going to find React in here. And if React isn't in here, we got a problem. But there's our folder React. And inside React, we have all this stuff available to us. Do I have to know what any of this stuff means? Not really. If I don't want to know it, I don't have to know it. But if I do want to know it and I want to see the actual code, I can jump in and see what's happening. So I can see the actual code of what's in there. And I can see, oh, okay, I am looking for something specific, and this is hurting my head. This is crazy to read. So you're going to see this quite a bit, that there's a lot of stuff in here that makes no sense as I'm looking at it at the moment. But I'm going to learn how to read all this stuff, because one day this will start to make a lot of sense. And I'll be like, oh, okay, I know what the problem is. I know what to look for. I know how to modify it. So that comes with experience. So here's our React. So let me go back to Package Manager, and let's go into this scripts. So this is what we've run already. We ran npm run start. So this we've seen React scripts start. And once we did npm start, which is also down here, it tells us npm start. We run this npm start and it launches our page for us. How does it know how to do that? It's got all this code internally that tells us how to run it. The next one we're going to get familiar with later on in the course is build. We'll touch it today, but we'll get more familiar with it as the course goes on. And then all this other stuff is really more so for the development environment that we don't really need to know at the moment. So I wanted to get into this because when we start adding packages in the future, this area is going to become really important. For today, this is all we need, and it's all good. Don't need to know anything more. And I wanted to show you node modules. As long as you have this folder, you are good to go. If you're missing node modules, your project is not going to work. So maybe if I did something along the lines, and I just want to show you this to belabor the point, and this is going to be kind of annoying, but I am going to go inside CD first app, and I'm going to do this rm-rf node modules. I'm going to get rid of this /node modules folder here, and you'll see that folder disappear. All right, so node modules is going to go bye-bye. And boom. And there's nothing in there, can't open anything, and gone. So non-existent, and why can I not? Why is it still there? There we go, node modules is gone. So now if I do an npm run start or npm start, I'm gonna have some problems. React scripts command not found. So right away, I've got this problem. Oh no. So I've got two options here. I'm gonna go the option of deleting the whole folder and restarting. But the other option is just to run npm install. But that's probably not going to fix anything. So I'm going to get rid of this folder and start all over again because I want the whole node modules. I want all these packages installed. So what I'm showing you is kind of break fix, high level stuff. So just getting used to deleting and creating. So rm-rf first app. All right. So I promise this will be the last time we delete this and recreate it before we jump into the actual coding of how do we convert this web page into a React app. So bear with me, trying to belabor the point, but once we start creating our first app, which we're done here, and we've got this package JSON, we know things are installing, we can watch this happening. We'll start actually copying code from here and then plugging it into the right place into our React app. All right. So give this a minute. And that should be it. So hopefully, just as a recap, I do kind of want to just show, where did my terminal go? There it is. That all these commands that just got outputted, or all these lines that got outputted, hopefully this isn't too scary. We kind of know a little bit about what's going on. The number of packages got installed. Where are those? Inside node modules. Git repository, we haven't touched yet, but hopefully we'll be able to get to that today. And then obviously the commands start, build, and test. And so now our project is almost live and ready to go. And there it is. So what are we going to do? Now we're going to go into CD first app and npm start. And now we're going to do some live coding. We're going to see something really, really cool that happens inside the browser. So I'm going to shrink this down a little bit. And boom, we have this page now. Now, if I want to edit this page, how do I do it? So everything is going to be in this source folder, in this src folder. So we're going to expand this, and there's going to be a bunch of files in the source folder. So inside the source folder, the main file that's driving this particular one is called app.js. So edit source app.js. This, to be honest, is not very clear if you've never done coding. If you have done coding, it's still not exactly clear. So we're going to go into app.js, and inside of app.js, we see all this funky stuff like, whoa, what's going on? We've got to import, we've got a function, we've got to return, but we also got all this HTML. We've done HTML before. We know what this looks like. We know what a div is. We know what classes are. Class name. We know what classes are. So maybe class name and classes, these look kind of familiar. We know what an image is. We've done that before. We know what this tag means. We know what this A means. Oh, this isn't so unfamiliar. So let's change something. I'm going to change learn React to already learning React. And I'm going to save this and see what happens. And hey, it changes here on the page. Automatic. I don't have to do anything. It just automatically updates on the page. Hey, already learning React. Already learning React. I want to change maybe this up here. And I'm saying, wait, there's code here. That's a new tag. Maybe I haven't seen that, but it's a tag nonetheless. So I want to create my own web page. How do I do that? And I'm going to save this. And whoa, we get this. I want to create my own web page. How do I do that? So already I can start modifying this web page that they've given us. Okay, I'm going to take this one big step further. We've got all this content here that we've created already from our CSS cheat sheet. We've been working on this one. We've seen that we've got responsive in here. We've got a bunch of cool things in here. So this page is already built out with the appropriate HTML and CSS, and it's already responsive. And by responsive, I mean, if I shrink the page down, this section 3 will go away. So if I shrink this and make it more and more narrow, section 3 goes away, and that tells us, hey, on a mobile site, it'll look like this. On a regular site, it'll look like this. So how do I take this code that's already been created and plug it in my React app? Well, I'm going to go up here and I'm going to click on copy, and I'm going to copy the element of the body. So very important to copy the body element. So on body, copy, copy element. And in here, now I'm going to come back to app.js. And inside of this return, I'm going to delete everything. So all I have now is just return, open parenthesis, close parenthesis. I don't care about anything else in here. Everything else can be the same. But for now, I'm just going to type in, paste all that stuff in. And I've got a few lines of errors, but I'm going to save this and just see what happens. I save it and whoa, okay, this is really terrifying. Everything's broken. I don't understand what's going on. But all right, there are some things that we do have to modify. There are some things that we do have to change up and correct. And React can get really, really specific on its syntax. So we're going to address those syntax changes right now. So on here in Visual Studio Code, we see a whole bunch of red lines here on the right-hand pane, and you'll see red dots as well. So let me expand this out so we can see those red dots a little bit more clearly. And so we can scroll down to those sections. And if I don't know what the problem is, I'm going to look here and it's going to tell me image is the problem. Well, image isn't really the problem. The problem is really that this image tag doesn't have what's called a closing tag. So here we'll see this is an error that looks intimidating and kind of, for once, makes a little bit of sense. So expected corresponding JSX closing tag for IMG. So we've been working with HTML. We know that in HTML, every tag needs a closing tag. So this div is an open tag. It has a closing tag here. And the signifier of a closing tag is that /. So really, in our HTML, the image in standard HTML doesn't have a closing tag. So what we can do is emulate a closing tag just by attaching a / to it. So right now it's complaining about line 29. And so we're going to go to line 29. And here we're going to add in at the very end after we're coloring a /. Really hard to see that, but it's a very small symbol. And then if we scroll back, that little red line goes away. If we save this again, we're going to have another problem. And the number changes. We go to line 47 as opposed to 29. So now we can go to line 47. So now here's line 46, 47, and we can say, oh, the image tag again has a problem. So I see 1, 2, 3. I'm going to clear up all 3 of these at the same time. And I'm just going to pop in a // and a / at the end of those 3. And once I do those, you can see already these little red dots on the side are clearing up. And I've got a few more probably that I need to deal with. So here's another image tag. I'll take care of that one and a couple more image tags, and I'll take care of those so we can see, oh, there's the image there, there's the image there. There's a much faster way to do this, but I just want to show you that, oh, we're corresponding, clearing out the problem, as well as watching the problem go away on the screen as well. So we can see we've gone from a few red dots to barely any, and now we just have a couple more left. And so if I scroll down to that area of the red dots, oh, I've got these two inputs. So I'm going to save this, and hey, we have the same error. Hey, closing tag for input. Okay, cool. So now I can come to the input and put in a closing tag, put in a closing / tag. So that's a really quick way to do it. And now once I've cleared all those errors, we've got our web page. This looks terrible. This looks awful. But we've got HTML inside of our React. We've got the skeleton for what we want to do. We've got our basic web page. We've got the images. We've got the structure. We've got the links. We've got all this good stuff working. So how do we do the CSS part of it? Okay, so we can come into sources and we can look at the CSS style sheet and we can copy all of this code that we did before from the CSS style sheet. We can do a copy and come over to our app CSS. Now this is going to get a bit confusing, but there are two CSSs inside of this. There's a CSS for the app.js and a CSS for the index.js. So we haven't gone over index.js yet and index CSS, but this is a global cascading style sheet. This is app specific. Since we're in app.js and we want to affect the change inside of here, I'm going to pop in all the CSS inside of app.js. I'm going to delete everything in here. You can go ahead and delete it yourself and paste in the CSS that we had from before. This is going to cause a little bit of a problem because index CSS has its own CSS. So I'm going to get rid of what's happening in index CSS. Before I do that, I will show you kind of what happens. Hey, here's our page now. Sweet, everything looks pretty good. It looks pretty legit. Index CSS is there. Do I have to delete this? Doesn't matter if I keep it or not, but let's delete it and save. And so we still have our page right here. So all good. Now, if I take a look at app CSS and app.js, if I don't have anything in app CSS, I'm going to come in here and I'm going to get rid of this. I'm going to save it. And our page goes back to looking terrible. Then I'm going to come back in here, pop it back in, and we'll save it. And our page goes to looking very nice. Hey, very cool. Our page is back to normal. All right. And we're inside of a React app. This is pretty awesome. So what did we do? We've only taken our HTML, stuck it in here, and we're good to go. That's all we did. We didn't have to do anything extra. We didn't have to change anything, but there's all this stuff above and below. And if we look at our code down below, React is really nice. React will tell us, hey, line 1, logo is defined but never used. And so we get these little nice errors and we get this grayed out inside of our code as well. So we can delete this and go ahead and save. And we're back to running a pretty nice clean file. This is considered very clean, no errors, no nothing, compiled successfully, and we can access our code. So now we've got our web page going and we've done something. I'm going to go through what sort of index CSS is and index.js are. These two are really important. Also, if I just want to click on logo, I can go to the logo and see what it looks like, but I'm not going to do that at the moment. But I just want to show that the logo file exists. So index.js is the main driver for our entire project. We are going to go in and modify this in the future, but not today. Today, for the basic app, for what we need, we don't have to modify anything in here. You're going to see some things in here that make absolutely no sense, but the two things that I want to highlight are index CSS and import app from app. Don't worry about the top line. These two lines, don't worry about it. And this last line of report web vitals, don't worry about it. It's okay. Don't have to worry about any of these components either. What this does, the root, React DOM create root, document get by element root, all this is doing is going into our index, which is in our public. So when we talked about HTML, one question I hope that was probably looming is, where is my index HTML? Index.html is the driver for every website in the world. Once you get into more advanced server-side things, you can change that up, but index.html is the main driver for every single web page. Without an index.html, a web page is going to have problems working. It's kind of like this is the ignition for a website. This is the starting point. So I'm going to come in here, and in our index.html, this is going to look crazy, but hopefully it looks at least somewhat familiar. There's a lot of comments in here. So in here in the green, you can delete them, you can ignore them, but hopefully what sticks out is, hey, we've got HTML here, we've got a head tag here. I've seen this before. We've got a meta tag, we've got links. I've seen this before too. And I've got this title here as well. I've seen that too. So here's where the head tag ends. And after the head tag, I've got this body tag. Oh, I've seen that too. Our body tag, I see an app.js as well. Oh, there's a body tag. Okay, cool. So this looks familiar. And then in here, there is a little warning. If you don't have JavaScript enabled on the web page or in the web browser, most web browsers have JavaScript enabled automatically, but some people may choose to turn it off, which makes their web browsing experience probably pretty limited. I am not going to turn off my JavaScript for the purposes of this to show you what it looks like to browse without JavaScript, because it basically kills the internet for me. And I shouldn't say kills the internet, but it greatly diminishes my experience of browsing the internet, since just about every web page is JavaScript run. But here is what I really want to call out. This is where all my code lives. So when I'm looking at index.cs or index.html, index.js, index JavaScript, the JS file here, calls that root by this method and says inside of that root, inside of this root, render all of this information. And render just means show me all this information. So what's happening here is I'm going to the web page, I'm grabbing an element called root. If I change the name of this whole website breaks. So I'm going to show you how that happens, and I'm going to show you the link in a moment, but I want to show you the connection first. So in here, there's this div ID root, and inside index.js is this get element by ID. We haven't talked about this because it's not going to come up very often, but it is here in this one line. It won't really come up that often in the course, but just want to show you it exists. If you write your own JavaScript within a web page, you are going to get very familiar with get element by examples. But for the purposes of React, we don't have to do that because we're not dealing with the exact web page. We're dealing with the back end that just shows everything on the web page. So we get the element by root, we stick it in this variable. And we talked about variables in the JavaScript course last week around const. This is a variable that cannot change, so the root will not change. However, we can append to it. And so to the root, we can add to root.render these variables. And what are we rendering? We're rendering the app. And where does app come from? App comes from /app up here, app.js. Why am I going into all of this? Because everything is connected, but I want to show how it's all connected. So what I'm going to do right now is break something. And what I'm going to break is in the index.html. And what I'm going to break in here is I'm going to change this to no root. And it doesn't matter if it's no root, doesn't matter if it's roots, doesn't matter if it's rot. I'm just going to take away or modify the variable in here so it is changed. And I'm going to save this. And now we see on our page, we go to a blank site entirely. So we no longer know how to access it, and there's no error here at all. I don't know what's going on. So let's go to developer tools and see if we get any information. And the idea is we probably won't get any information at all, because this is functioning as it should function. And so this can get really, really frustrating because I don't get any indication of error at all. I don't get any idea of what's happening. All I know is it's not working. And so if I come into index.html and it says no root, if I don't know where to look, I'm going to have some problems. So that's why I want to show, if I change this variable to no_root and run it again, well, then now I'm going to have my app come back. And so that's the part that I want to show, is how this stuff is connected. The chances that you'll actually deal with this are pretty minimal to none. But what I want to show is how to look for the pattern, how to look for the things that may or may not be broken and how they might be broken, and how to trace back to the origin, and then we can fix it. So now we have root come back and we have our web page come back. So index CSS connects to index HTML. How does index.js connect to index HTML? Through React DOM and get element by ID to the root. So React DOM automatically connects to index.html and pulls down the root, and then we have what we want to show on our root. And now we're going to go into our app. What do we actually want to show? So I'm going to trace backwards again. So app comes from where? Import app from /app. And if I look at app, I have app.js. And inside app.js, I have this import app CSS up top. So this is, you're gonna have to train your eyes. This is terrible, but you will get a headache. Looking at this, your head will spin as you're making sense of this. It will get very confusing and you'll start to feel like you're going insane or crazy. Welcome to the world of coding. Everyone feels like they are going insane or going crazy in the beginning until they can finally see through the fog and understand, oh, this is what's going on. Ah, I get it. Okay. All right. So now that we have app CSS, we see, oh, our styling comes from app CSS over here on the side. Before I go into that, I want to come into this function app. It doesn't look like it right now, but if I just have this code up here, this page is not going to work. And I'll show you what I mean by that. At the very bottom of all of this is this really, really specific line. And it says export default app. So this one I am going to get rid of, and we're going to see what happens to our app. And we're going to see, holy wow, things just went haywire. Failed to compile, attempted import error, app does not contain a default export. And then app is defined but never used, like not found, module has no export. So over and over, there's this idea of like module has no export, app was not found, does not contain a default export. So it's telling me something around this idea of export default, imported as app was not found. And so I don't know what that means, but if I took this to, let's just say, the internet, and I started to Google for this, and I maybe found, hey, Stack Overflow, awesome resource. It can tell me what my problem might be. And so here it might be coming through and asking, hey, what's the problem? So I see this export default function or export default kind of idea. If I don't know what I'm looking for, I can see, okay, I can see there's some problem here. So I'm going to have to look around for my code and see what happens. But the idea is use export default function, or as I go lower, I can see, oh, here's my export default function down here that other people have recommended. So I might have to dig and find where the answers are. So this particular file might not have been that helpful. I might have to look somewhere else. I can try things in here, but I know that what I'm missing is export default app. Now, what is this? It's basically saying, hey, what we've done in here, I want to expose this to the world. I want everyone in the world to be able to access this file. If I don't have it, then nobody's going to be able to access this file at all. So now that I do have it, now I can safely launch my project and access that app again. So every single file that we have is going to have this export default app or export default or export something so that others can use it. It's kind of like saying, hey, yeah, you can share my lunch, go for it. I have an endless supply of lunch that everybody can have. So that's kind of like the idea between export and default app. Okay, so now what are we going to do? We've kind of looked at function app and this idea. Inside of every function, we kind of talked about this last week, there's sort of a return or something that the function does. We didn't talk about return specifically, but we're going to talk about it today. So what I'm going to do is actually delete all this because this gets really, really heavy. So let me delete all of this and we're going to generate some errors. So all I want in here is function, app, return, and this. And we've got our export default. So I'm going to run this and we're going to get some errors. And there's a bunch of errors we get, and it won't be very intuitive what the error is. But here it says module build failed, syntax error, unexpected token, and inside the return, there is absolutely nothing. So what do I do in here? It's got just this stuff that it spewed out. What it's expecting inside of here really is inside, because this is JavaScript with HTML, what it's really expecting is a div. This is the bare minimum that I need in order to run this. I don't need anything else inside of here, but I do need 2 div tags. Before, when we launched our site, it was a body tag. So we had body tags here before. Whoops. 2 body tags, which is okay. It is a form of a div, but really, if I want to be pure to the language and work with other people, it is really what I need is a div tag in here. And so that clears out any errors, everything compiles successfully. So what am I going to do in here? Every React function needs a div tag inside of the return, encompassing all the code. And so what happens on this page? Hey, every React function needs a div tag inside of the return encompassing all the code. Cool. At least I know this works. If I got rid of this div tag and just ran this as is, I'm going to get this error again. The module build failed, unexpected token, and it's like, wait, I don't know what's happening here. I don't know how to process any of this stuff. I need a tag. I need something to tell me what to do and how to process. So parsing error, unexpected token, you can't run it just like this, unlike HTML. So with HTML, you can just run and type whatever we want to. We saw that in the previous class with HTML. Here I am going to have what is called a div tag. And so I need to surround this with a div, and then all my problems go away. So I do want to show that inside here, unlike HTML, I cannot just type directly. I do need to surround it with a div tag. In more recent, I'm not going to recommend this, but if you're looking at code, or if you've been coding for a little while within your first 6 months, or maybe your first year, you might see something like this in React. This is okay as well. It's called a fragment. It's not required. I mean, this is the new way people are doing it, but I am still very much of the old school ilk, where use the div tags, makes it easier. That way people know, excuse me, people know that this is a proper element or proper function. So what are we going to do as well? We're going to change the format of this. We're going to change it up and show you different ways to do this exact same thing, because in React, there's so many ways to do this. Now, you're going to see this very common, very often. I'm going to get rid of all of this, and I'm going to ask a question, and just in your mind, just think about, if I save this and run it, what do you think the error will be? So if I'm going to save it and run it, oh no, it doesn't have a default export. Cool. So attempted import, app does not contain a default export, imported as app. The reason I'm showing these errors is because these will come up so often while you're learning how to code in React. And the way to get around it is just to watch the errors, see the errors, Google the errors, and figure out what the answer is. But hopefully these are simple enough where if you see, oh, it doesn't contain a default export, nah, son of a, I forgot my export default. I'm going to show you a different way to do this. And we kind of covered this a little bit in the JavaScript course, but I'm going to type in const app equals, and this syntax looks very funky. I am well aware of that. And my head hurts when I look at this. And I'm going to type in a div, and this is another way to define a function. This is the one I tend to like. Now I'm going to save this, and we're still going to run into a problem. So I'm going to save this, and hey, does not contain a default export. Okay, so what do? I do an export default app. Cool. Now I save, compiled successfully, and hey, this is another way to define a function. So this method for me, I tend to like this one because it's just what I've gotten used to. So I want you to see that there's two ways to do this. There is the classic function way, but there is this new way that people are moving to, which is called the arrow function. So this is what's called an arrow function. And you'll see this more often than not in code, as opposed to this one. This is a classic function. Now, you might think, why the hell am I learning about two different ways to write the same thing? I don't understand the syntax at all. I'm trying to provide a way where you will start to see what's more common in code bases that you'll start to encounter, as opposed to what comes out of the box. Comes out of the box, this is old. To be honest, I don't think many people even use Create React App anymore because it's a bit older, but I like to teach this because it's the foundation for Create Next App, Create Expo App, create all the other Gatsby app, create all these other frameworks. This is still going to be your foundation for every other framework. So if you get familiar with this, adapting to other frameworks becomes really simple. So I want to teach you how to build Legos before you start building Starship Troopers or Star Wars. Sorry, bad reference. So I'm teaching you how to build the basic bare bones Legos. Okay, so I know I've gone on and talked quite a bit about what's happening in app.js. We haven't really touched app CSS, but I hope that this one makes sense because of what we've done in previous. All we're doing in import app CSS is the same thing as the link idea in HTML that we covered a while back. And so inside of here, we will not have a standard link for, let's say, we wouldn't have a link CSS style sheet in here. We don't need this anymore because JavaScript takes care of it for us in the backend. So I no longer need that. Now I can add other style sheets if I want to, but that's besides the point. So what I'm going to do is actually delete all of this. I'm going to go back to our code that we had. And so now we have this every React function needs a div tag and all that. Cool. We're going to go back to our main site that we copied from originally, and we're going to copy the body element again. So we're going to copy element and bring it into our element here. And there are going to be some changes that I need to make because I'm copying directly from the site. First change I want to make, instead of the word body, I'm going to change that to the word div, and I'm going to come down to the bottom, and our highlighter, our visual editor tells us, hey, that needs to be a div. All right, cool. The next thing I'm going to do is put the forward slashes at the end of these inputs and at the end of the image tags. If you're using this, I'm going to show you what the shortcut is to highlight and replace or auto replace, and it is Command D. So if you go to, I think it's the Windows key and D, and so if you do that, you'll be able to highlight all of them, and you'll be able to go to the end, change them all at once, and then clear all the errors out at once. So save that, and now we're back to our original React with, hey, we've got our CSS cheat sheet and everything in here. We also have our media queries, we also have our responsiveness. So if we come back to our site and we look at our site on, let's say, a iPhone 12 Pro, and we're looking at the site this way, hey, there's section 1, section 2, and if I change it to a landscape feature or a landscape, then hey, I probably have my section 3 in here as well. So we can see responsiveness is also working. I am going to throw some more information at you in regards to the build folder. So now I'm going to cover the going into production. We haven't optimized our app. We haven't done anything to like talk about what good coding practices are or how to arrange our app or any of the functions or anything like that. But I am just going to talk about what it's like to take our site and put it into production. The way this site sits right now, it is terrible. It's functional, but it is not a good site because it does not adhere to the practices of just good coding. It works. It's essentially a house. It's got 4 pillars and a roof, but it's not a great house. It needs a lot of work still. So I'm going to go over the good practice or the best practices in the future, but for now, it's just about, hey, here's how things connect. All right. So we've got these two folders, public and source, and we've got our package JSON folder here. So what I'm going to do is stop the program, Control C, and we're going to focus on this npm run build command. And I'm going to show you what happens when we do an npm run build. And I'm just going to type in the command first, npm, and I'm inside of the folder. So I'm inside in the same place with the package JSON. And what am I really running? I'm really running inside the package JSON. I'm running this command. So npm run automatically goes into package JSON and picks out the scripts and picks out the build. So there's keywords here that go into build. And just watch these three folders. You're going to see an additional folder pop up when I run npm build. So npm run build, let it do its thing, and we see, hey, a build folder pops up right here. It does it pretty quick, and okay, cool. So we can see, hey, it's creating an optimized production build. It tells us, hey, there's probably a issue with Babel reset or React app. We can probably Google this and fix it in the future, but for now, for today, don't worry about it. What it does is actually compresses all of our code. So it takes our code here and then compresses it down into what they call chunks. And so we'll see that code in a moment, but we can see it's changed the names of our code. So it's changed app.js into main.js, index.js, and then this is a chunk, which is app.js. And then it's changed our CSS into this. So it also tells us the build folder is ready and ready to be deployed. You can serve it with a static server. So I'm going to go ahead and do that and show you what that looks like. So if I go into build, cd into build, and I run this program, I've got a package called live server. And whoops, I should do an npm. So live server is a really cool tool that allows me to emulate what a production server would be. So I can install npm install -g is global. So if I don't specify the -g, it'll only install it locally. We're going to go over npm at a later time, and you don't have to install this today. But if you're feeling brave enough, you can follow these guides, and they work because I'm going to show you how they run. And so I'm going to type in live server. And all I'm going to do is hit enter, and it automatically uses the index HTML. So down here, we can see serving users, roadblock, desktop, first build, or first app build at HTTP 127.0.0.1 port 8080. So that 8080 is really important because before we were running it on 3000. So if I come back to our original, we were running it on port 3000. If you don't understand ports, if you don't understand these numbers, go ahead and ask in the chat, and I can give kind of a high level, detailed. I can give a high level idea of what a port is, and we can go into it. But for now, just know that, hey, a port is like another doorway that I can use to access applications. Whether I use localhost or whether I use 127, this is interchangeable. So I can also change this to localhost, and I'll get the same exact output on port 8080. So localhost 3000, localhost 8080. The idea of a port is it's just a doorway or just a place where my computer can serve an application. I can keep these two things separate. There's a total of 65,535 ports. Some are reserved, some are not. So some are common, and then this is one of the common ones. But I'll go into that in detail if you have questions later on. So now I've got live server, and inside of this build folder, I've got a whole bunch of stuff. Now this build folder might look a little bit kind of like the public folder. So I've got maybe a favicon, I've got an index.html, I've got a logo 192 and 512. I've got those in the public folder as well. I've got a manifest JSON in here as well, and I've got a robots.txt file in here too. So it's really kind of like a summary, and with a few more additional tools, maybe not a summary, but kind of like taking the public folder and adding a few layers on top of it. And so that's what it's doing inside the static. So if I take a look at CSS and I look at main, oh, okay, not bad. I see this stuff in here. I can see a whole bunch of stuff in here. But what am I really seeing? I'm seeing my CSS inside the main. And so if I come down to my CSS, app CSS, I see this word section para. I'm pretty sure inside of mine, I see section para, probably right about somewhere in here. There's a section para somewhere in here. And there it is. There's section para. So if I come back to this sort of uh, static main CSS and I take a look at section para, I can see, where did it go? There it is. So I can see, hey, these are my properties for my section para. My font size, letter spacing, line height, margin, opacity, all that stuff is there the same way it is in my original app CSS under section paragraph. I have opacity, font size, line height, letter spacing, margin, padding. I have all the stuff in there. So all it's doing is taking my CSS and crunching it down into this. This is what's called minifying or minimizing, essentially, getting rid of all the spaces, making it as small and as tight as possible, because spaces, enters, they take up space, they take up characters, they take up data. So just this space alone here and the space between these two lines, that enter, it takes up space. So if they crunch it all on in one line, then it take up a lot less space, which means much faster loading times. So React is really about efficiency. React is trying to take away all the space and make it really, really compact so that we get faster and more efficient loading times. All right. So further, we're going to go into this idea of the map. And inside of the map, there's a whole bunch of language in here that doesn't make any sense, but this correlates to something, which will then correlate to my actual CSS itself. So in here, we can see section para, and we can see a bunch of stuff in here. And if I need to unminify this or make it web page applicable or understandable, here's a dictionary that will extract or expand. So here's my shrunken down, which a web page will not understand. Here's my dictionary to unexpand it or to decompress it. So this is a compressed, this is the uncompressed. And that's all available because React works with the web page to do this. Then in our JS, this is going to look a lot more funky, but we have our JS data here, and this makes no sense at all. There's a whole bunch of stuff in here that is just what is going on, and it goes on forever and ever and ever. And in here, I couldn't even tell you what any of this stuff means. This is all header stuff. But inside the chunk, I will probably, hopefully, be able to find where my code is somewhere in the middle, but more than likely, probably not. It's probably going to take me some time to figure out where it is in here, but I honestly don't know. It's got its own little language, an own way to map all this stuff out and put it together in a way that it understands, but clearly it works. So am I going to try to decipher any of this stuff? Nope. I'm going to leave this all alone and let it do its thing. And then it's obviously got the index. And in the index, it's got our root in here, which is going to be right about here. So our div root is here. This looks familiar, and it's just minified. And so these are kind of like the main things in the build. And the cool thing with the build is I can take this folder directly and I can upload it to any site I want to, and it will work right away. I can take this to HostGator, I can take this to Amazon, I can put this anywhere. And as long as I have a web server that's running, I can launch this directly. All I really need is that index HTML file, and that's really it. So I know that was a lot, but the power in React is I can take static content and make it dynamic. So in the future, I'm going to show you how to make it dynamic automatically in here, and then how to structure it so that it is much more accessible or much more readable in the future. And eventually, I'm going to show you kind of what it looks like eventually in the future. And so I'm going to go to GitHub, and we're going to go to the CSS React cheat sheet, and I'm going to show you kind of what the end goal is when we go to our repositories. And none of this makes sense, so don't worry about it. But I create a cheat sheet React GitHub page, and inside of here, I've got settings, and I've got pages, and then I've got this sort of live site that you can access today. So if you want to access the version that we've just created today in React, so this is all React based, you can go to this site to get the final product that we're going to make. And inside of here, we'll be able to see the developer tools, and this will look slightly different. So if I come in here, I see there's my, you need to enable JavaScript to run this app. I've got this div ID root. So in my mind, I'm thinking, hey, this is already a React app. Cool. And then inside of here, I've got my div and I've got all these sections here. So I've wrapped all this stuff in a React app. If I come back to our original, hey, this looks really simple. This is pure standard HTML. And here's the HTML code directly with no React, no JavaScript, no nothing. Here, I've got my JavaScript wrapper. The other way to be able to tell is if I come into the sources for both sites, I see, hey, here's my GitHub IO webpage. You can access this globally. And here's the CSS cheat sheet React. Inside here is static. And inside the static, I have my CSS, my JS, and I have all my other files in here. I've got, I look at the CSS, I've got the index CSS, and I've got my main CSS. I've got my JS files, and I've got my components, and I've got all the files that basically tell me, oh, this is my site. So if I come into the hero, I can see here's my div, and I can see the contents of the file. Now, I will be transparent and say that this is using a way that is allowing people to see it. Most sites you go to will hide that code. That was one of the big sort of advancements with React is you could hide this code from the general public so they couldn't steal your code. But still, you can come into Elements and start to take the code anyway. But with the JavaScript components, these are going to become a little bit more hidden in the future. But I just want to show you what they look like when we upload it directly without that feature. So this hopefully gives you kind of like a better idea of where we're trying to go. And I know I'm spending a lot more time in the back end infrastructure parts of it, because that's the part that's going to be the most important, not building the web page. I think building the web page, once we've gone through Figma and we've kind of seen, oh, there's this boxes idea, and then I just have to know what I want in the boxes, then kind of style it, play around with it. Then I can start to take it into HTML directly. And once I take it to HTML, then I can take it to React directly. So as long as I can create the HTML, then I can stick it into React, and then I'm good to go. So you do not need to go from Figma to HTML to React. You can go Figma to React directly, and that's okay. And that's what we're doing here essentially, is going from Figma to React directly. Later on, I know today it doesn't seem like React has a lot of power to it, but I'm going to show you later on in the future how we can make things a lot more dynamic, especially when it comes to buttons, interactivity, look and feel of the web page. Get as creative as you want to get. If you want ideas on the web page, there's a site called Dribbble, and then you can start to see kind of different ideas on how to create sites, both mobile and desktop, and be able to see interactivity. If there's a feature that you really like on a page, maybe there's a hover feature, there's a drop-down feature, there's a menu feature that you really like that you see as very intuitive, drop me a line and we can figure out how to deploy it, employ it, or figure out where the code base is for it so you can implement it on your site. But yeah, for today, that's pretty much it. So state will come up later on when we get into the contact form. That will be a pretty big lesson. So when we start actually developing this section, the contact us, that will have a lot more to do with state, because then we can start to change values in here, and we will obviously need to store state if we want to be able to submit it to send an email. So state will be a really big part of the contact form. All right. That'll probably be in like 2 weeks, I think, or maybe a week. We might be moving faster than I thought. And so I think we're going to start to get into breaking down this hierarchy and creating a section or a nav bar. And we might be able to do all of the next 2 week stuff next week. And then the week after, probably get into state. So it might be a week ahead, I think, depending on how quick we get through next week. So yeah. But yeah, if there are no other questions, this is supposed to go up until 9:30, but yeah, I mean, if you want to open up for conversation, if you have questions on anything else, let me know and I can try to assist as best as possible. But today, hopefully, this was helpful to break down kind of like the very bare bones basic of React and how you can take something that's already built, plug it in, and then modify it yourself for what your needs are. Yeah. If there's no other questions, thank you all for coming today. Um, yes, the videos will be made public. I'll post them in the meetup comments, and then I've already posted let me post it again, but the YouTube link is available here. And so here's the playlist with all of the videos from the previous sections or previous lessons we've done. And that covers Figma, it covers HTML basics, CSS basics, responsive web design, as well as beginner entry level JavaScript for what we need just in order to get comfortable with React. Cool. Good to hear. Thank you all for coming. All right. I will see you next week. Bye, everyone.